Good afternoon and welcome to City Journal News. I'm Chris Neese.
And I'm Bethany Hayes.
Coming up on the program, we take a closer look into the controversial plan for an Apple store in Federation Square, as well as the growing issue of student homelessness. But first, let's take a look at the day's news with Bree Wild.
Thanks, Chris. A Manus Island refugee has died after jumping from a moving bus. The Rohingya man was reportedly travelling from refugee accommodation into the main town shortly after 11 a.m. local time when the incident occurred. He is believed to have had serious mental and physical health conditions. It's not yet clear whether or not this death was an accident. One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, has withdrawn support for the coalition's company tax cuts. Her party reversed its decision, Hanson claiming the cuts failed to meet her demands, such as reducing immigration rates, building coal-fired power plants and lowering spending. 2 private hospitals in Geelong and Kew are to shut. More than 400 jobs are now at risk after the hospital's operator, Healthscope, announced the institutions are no longer viable. Geelong Private Hospital and Cotham Private Hospital in Kew will close gradually over the next 4 weeks. South Australian Archbishop Philip Wilson has been found guilty of concealing child sexual abuse. The 67-year-old was accused of failing to report abuse against priest Jim Fletcher in the 1970s, making him the oldest Catholic to be charged with such an offence. And back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Bree. And we will catch Bree later in our program discussing Melbourne's response to the planned Apple store in Federation Square.
But first, looking at some other developments in the heart of the CBD. The City of Melbourne's $250 million redevelopment of Queen Victoria Market has been put on hold. Victoria Raptors reports this follows a decision by Heritage Victoria, blindsiding the council.
It's Melbourne's most popular landmark, but even its historical significance won't protect it from future redevelopment. The City of Melbourne has proposed a $250 million plan to restore and refurbish the market, but Heritage Victoria's decision to reject a key element of the proposal has blindsided City Council.
I think I'm very disappointed by the decision. I think it was a lot of communication could be done between Heritage Victoria and also the council to work together to come up with a better, to come from a outcome that is beneficial to both. I just hope that we can keep working forward and avoid the politics behind it, because we have gone through many business cases and studies and everything to show that if we don't do anything, the market will fail.
The Queen Victoria Market continues to thrive as one of Melbourne's last traditional working markets. City Council says the proposed redevelopment aims to secure the market's future, but customers aren't convinced.
I think it's pretty good as it stands, and it's like, why fix something if it's not broken? But that's just my opinion.
I personally think something has to be done within the market, but I think what they're proposing is outrageous.
I think they should leave the market as it is, spend the money to upgrade it, but keep the same facade.
Friends of Queen Victoria Market, a community group made up of traders and shoppers, have rallied against the potential redevelopment.
We don't like it at all. We think it's a disaster for the market, a disaster for the community of Melbourne, a disaster for the state of Victoria. They wouldn't go and pull down the town hall, and this is of equal significance.
City Council has announced it will not appeal Heritage Victoria's decision. In Melbourne, Victoria Raptors, City Journal News.
Now for foreign news with Ali Robson.
Thanks, Chris. The US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has issued a list of demands that he says needs to be included in the nuclear treaty with Iran, threatening to use all economic and military forces to destroy their economy. He's also warned of punishment against European businesses who continue to trade with Iran. Sweden is sending out instructions to its citizens on how to cope with an outbreak of war, as the country faces an assertive Russia across the Baltic Sea. The 20-page pamphlet, titled "If Crisis or War Comes," is the first public awareness campaign of its kind since the Cold War. European Union leaders will formally approve a free trade agreement with Australia and New Zealand tonight, paving the way for a multi-billion-dollar deal before the UK leaves the EU. and a virtually unknown academic is about to become Italy's Prime Minister. Giuseppe Conte has an established academic law career, but is described as unheard of in the political sphere. This comes as Italy prepares to toughen its stance on migration and push back against the European Union. And that's all in foreign news. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Sally. Other development plans for Federation Square have caused community tension to run high over plans for an Apple store to be built in the centre of the square. The Andrews government announced in December the Apple store will replace the Yarra building, increasing the square's failing revenue and creating jobs. Backlash from the community suggests that the role of Fed Square is not to generate income. Bree Wild reports.
A must-see destination for some, and a place to unwind for others. Most would agree that Federation Square is a priceless part of Melbourne CBD. However, a price tag of over $30 million can be put on maintenance and operational costs over the last 5 years.
These ongoing costs have been a key reason for the Andrews government in allowing Apple to replace this Yarra building behind me here with their flagship store. However, some Melburnians don't believe this to be reason enough to make such a change.
Fed Square is a success. 10 million visitors a year, that's more than anywhere else, and it runs at an operating profit. So they actually don't need an Apple store or any other retail store to make ends meet. There should be some spaces in our state that don't have to make a profit. The Botanic Gardens doesn't make a profit. Should we put a big Bunnings there? Spaces like that give us something else.
Apple's like a commercial store, and then around here it's like we've got a few restaurants and stuff, but it's kind of more a cultural thing.
Why not just get rid of the things that people are visiting the least, and then sort of use it as a cultural hub instead of something to make money?
However, some can see the benefits of having the store.
Well, it'd certainly bring more people to the square, because obviously it's Apple, people love Apple, and it'd probably help the businesses around Fed Square. They'll get more business because of Apple bringing their business here.
Although the store appears to be moving forward and construction to begin in 2019, campaigners are rallying for support in a final attempt to prevent such a change to the city's public space.
We think we can put enough pressure on the government to exercise that get-out clause, and heaven forbid Apple will just have to find another space elsewhere, just like every other retailer in Victoria.
Bree Wild, City Journal News.
And now for finance with Kasia Kosidlo.
Thanks, Bethany. The Aussie market is down 0.8% as of 1 p.m, with Telstra shares on the out after yesterday's service outage. Oil is at $72 a barrel and continues to climb due to political unrest in Argentina and Iran. Gold is at a 5-month low as the US dollar sustains its long-term rise. The Aussie dollar will get you 75 US cents, 64 euro cents and 84 Japanese yen. Now we're going to take an in-depth look at the property market. Young Melburnians are using new methods to find rooms and housemates. A popular Facebook group is the go-to option for those wanting to live in the inner north. I investigated the competitive rental market that fuels it. You may know it as Sponge Sugar, but Fairy Floss is a Melbourne-based Facebook group for share house listings with over 150,000 members.
It's very common to see even over 100 responses to a posting sometimes if it's a good price or if it's in a good location.
It all comes down to showcasing your personality in a brief message and whether you can get in before everyone else does.
I searched for months. I went to probably 10 different houses to look at them. There was this one place where I went in for a meeting once and everything seemed fine, they liked me, but then there was 2 other housemates to talk to. So one of them I had to Skype, and then another one I had to go to her work on a Thursday in South Yarra and talk to her after her shift at about midnight at a bar, and I didn't even get the house.
Demand in the inner city isn't easing. The number of active bonds in the city of Melbourne has shot up by nearly 58% in the last 5 years, the highest of any local government area in Victoria. As a young person using Fairy Floss, it's easy to get stuck in less than ideal circumstances.
It can be a great starting way to get into the market, but I would just be mindful that you do your due diligence and you check that you're not going to be subletting or putting yourself in a position where, you could be in trouble with an agent.
If you're going the traditional agency route, it can be just as tough as online. With 20 to 30 applicants showing up at property viewings and opens, it means you need to find ways to stand out.
Number one, get to the open on time. Number two, look presentable, be friendly, because you're really going to set the tone and jog that person's memory for being the best candidate for the property. So yeah, you do want to try and stand out in the best way possible, so just be nice.
In other property news, more people are moving out of capital cities in the quest to find affordable housing. This comes as popularity in new outer developments and in regional communities continue to rise. Oliver Haig reports on the growing trend of internal migration.
There is no question, cities are expensive.
Suburbs like Preston, where I live, have gone up exponentially even in the last 2 years.
As the prices of homes go up, new developments in outer areas have been a popular and affordable alternative in the housing market.
There are some indications that yes, housing affordability, or the lack of housing affordability, may be in part driving people out of Melbourne, out of Sydney, towards some of the new developments.
Known as internal migration, data has shown waves of people relocating and buying up.
Probably the last 5 years I've seen the most growth out of these areas because the land prices were low.
So there are certain suburbs in New South Wales and Victoria that have seen explosive growth from this internal movement.
Outer areas of Melbourne such as Tarneit, Williams Landing and Cranbourne East have all been areas experiencing greater interest, with Tarneit experiencing 9% growth and Cranbourne East experiencing over 27% growth. However, it is still unclear whether unaffordability in its own right is driving these movements.
Is the decline in housing affordability causing the change in mobility in terms of the movements towards those new suburbs? The answer is we don't know for sure.
One thing is certain, the undeniable popularity of outer areas.
Areas like these are really good to buy cheap, not so cheap, but still cheaper than the market, that you can enter the market and still get into something competitive.
With no end in sight for cheaper city homes, moving regional may just be about the only way on finding an affordable home. Ollie Haig, City Journal News.
The 2017 census revealed tertiary education and TAFE students make up 10% of Australia's homeless. Summer Wooley reports on the need for greater public awareness and university support.
Nearly 11,000 students were homeless as of 2017, many living in their cars, homeless facilities, or in severely overcrowded homes. While the statistics are shocking, experts suggest they should come as no surprise.
We've sort of witnessed a crisis in plain sight for a number of years now for people on low incomes, and that's students. So many of them are trying to get by, they're trying to complete their studies, they're trying to better themselves, but the economic environment is terrible.
With homelessness as a whole increasing 14% in the past 5 years, there's growing pressure on universities to adapt student welfare policy.
It's really critical that universities are aware and acknowledge that this is actually an issue that a lot of their students face.
While RMIT Student Services declined to be interviewed, in a statement they said, "There are several support services at RMIT that are free and confidential. All support services, including RMIT Connect and college staff, work together to help students and make referrals so that students get help specific to their individual circumstances." While RMIT has adopted an all-hands-on-deck approach, welfare organisations suggest tailored training and experience is required to identify and assist homeless youth.
For university teaching staff, they are not trained in identifying homelessness or referral and support. So it's not about criticising them, but recognising that there's a gap there.
The existing stigma of sleeping bags, blankets and begging has led to many in need disassociating themselves from the issue. In order to increase engagement, experts suggest a resolution requires a coordinated approach.
Actually tackling youth homelessness is going to take the coordinated effort amongst government, amongst corporate, amongst community organisations.
For now, students facing homelessness are encouraged to reach out to community organisations and services. Summer Wooley, City Journal News.
Now for sport with Conor Morrissey.
Thanks, Chris. Melbourne Storm centre Curtis Scott has accepted a 2-match ban after breaking Manly player Dylan Walker's eye socket. Many commentators have said they believe the ban is too lenient, given Scott punched Walker in the face 3 times. Manly CEO Lyle Gorman has proposed that in cases of striking, the penalty should match the length of the injury. In the NBA, LeBron James has led the Cleveland Cavaliers to their 2nd victory in a row over the Boston Celtics. James finished with 44 points after the Cavaliers raced to a 16-point lead by the end of the first quarter, which ultimately proved to be a game-winning difference. The Cavaliers have now squared the series at 2 wins each, and if they win, they could potentially face off against the Golden State Warriors in the finals for the 4th time in a row. FIFPro, the International Soccer Players Union, have thrown its support behind suspended Peru captain Paulo Guerrero. Guerrero was banned for cocaine use, despite an acknowledgement from FIFA and the Court of Arbitration for Sport that he did not do it deliberately. Australian captain Nile Jedinak co-signed a letter with the captains of France and Denmark saying the ban is unfair, despite being Peru's group stage opponents in the World Cup. The AFL's annual Indigenous round is next week, and the build-up is shining a light on attitudes towards Indigenous people. The significance of the round has been questioned, with many believing it to be more tokenistic than a true acknowledgement of Indigenous Australians. Nick Durbano explores the significance of the round in 2018.
The Dreamtime Game, a ceremony celebrating Indigenous culture which is tied in with Australia's national sport, as 2 of the biggest AFL clubs, Richmond and Essendon, go head-to-head in front of a packed MCG. In recent time, it has been the showcase game of the annual AFL Indigenous Round, or formerly known as the Sir Doug Nicholls Round.
Showcases the Indigenous talent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good that the Indigenous kids, be able to get, a little bit out of their heritage.
However, the round has faced criticism due to accusations of it being tokenistic, with some labelling it as a cheap thrill, and as a result, fails to recognise the Indigenous history of the game on a wider scale beyond the weekend of football.
I don't think the question is, are they doing enough? I think it's, are they doing too much?
I think it's a good idea, but the AFL could definitely be doing more.
It's probably the only example across world sport we can find that celebrates Indigenous culture, that chooses to, through the lens of reconciliation and also to unite people. So that's really unique in that aspect.
The Richmond Football Club are working together with the Korangamagi Institute to create employment pathways for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders within the age of 14 and 21, by also providing education about their Indigenous roots with a unique link into Australian rules football, but also about the significance of the Sir Doug Nicholls round. With the Indigenous round approaching, establishments such as the Korangamagi Institute, in conjunction with the Long Walk charity, have begun to ramp up preparations for the upcoming Dreamtime game. Both institutes have established programs to help spread the word about the upcoming round and how it helps to recognise Indigenous pioneers in the game of Australian rules football.
It's fantastic to sort of have a game that acknowledges that and provides hope, aspiration for young Indigenous people across the country, but also it speaks to non-Aboriginal people about the beauty of Aboriginal culture and a celebration of the game.
The AFL Indigenous round kicks off on the 1st of June at the SCG when the Swans host the Blues. In Melbourne, Nick Tabano, RMIT City Journal.
And that's all for today's sport. Bethany?
Thanks, Connor. Recent studies show cycling accidents are on the rise in Melbourne. Ali Robson reports on the dangers cyclists are facing today and how their safety can be improved.
Cycling is a popular transport of choice, with over 50% of Melbourne residents owning a bike. It takes the pressure off the public transport system and reduces congestion. But with cycling comes risks.
There's definitely a lot of increase in cyclist incidents on the roads these days, either because people are on their phone and texting or they're just not paying attention much.
I think on certain roads it's just a bad decision to ride your bike, and if you get hurt, it's obvious that was going to happen.
A recent study revealed that cyclists hospitalised for major trauma increased 8% per year, whilst injuries to people in cars remained the same.
Christopher Managers is one of the many cyclists who have experienced such trauma. The accident took place here on the corner of Toorak Road and Williams Road. Managers was knocked unconscious at the scene and was taken to hospital for head wounds, concussion and broken ribs.
And I was thinking to go right there, but in a moment I hear the noise of something hit me and then black. and I wake up in the middle of the street.
Victoria is the only state, along with the Northern Territory, where the 1 metre passing rule is not enforced by law. Instead, there is a 12-month campaign to change motorists' behaviour towards sharing the road with bikes. Whether or not this has improved the situation for cyclists is a topic of debate. The Melbourne Cycling League believe there is still more that needs to be done.
Greater education of drivers, I think greater education of cyclists, I think better infrastructure. Still you ride through the city and you wonder where that bike lane goes, or it just ends.
The Give the Space Back to the Riders campaign, run by the Victorian Government, will continue through until November. For now, motorists are encouraged to keep cyclists in mind and give 1 metre distance to them when passing. Ali Robson, City Journal News.
The Victorian Government has announced it will introduce measures to improve the safety of emergency service workers. This comes in the face of rising assaults on paramedics. We have Haig in Melbourne to tell us more. Ollie, what has been proposed?
Good afternoon. So we've got news coming out of Melbourne this morning as the Andrews government has taken a significant stance on treatment towards paramedics and emergency services. So the first condition that has been announced is that emergency services who are attacked will now be coming under Category 1 offence. So with that comes with significant penalties, as that happens to also be the same category as those who are charged with murder and rape, in fact. This all comes about after a court recently saw 2 people who attacked a paramedic in 2016 successfully appealed the case and walked free of court, obviously causing significant backlash, resulting in the Andrews government announcing these changes.
Will this mean people can't claim they were drunk?
In fact, so what's happening is they've said that drunkenness, drugs and psychological immaturity will no longer be taken as a defence by hearing in courts. And saying this, Attorney General Martin Pakula said that the government was still reviewing cases where those who have been involved in, or patients rather, who have seen an episode of psychological nature will also be reviewed, and defendants who want to plead not guilty can do so if they have a mental illness.
I understand the Premier had some tough words for people thinking of attacking emergency service workers.
He did indeed. So in a statement he read this morning, he said that we value the safety and honour of those who are paramedics and the work they do. Anyone who wants to avoid going to jail, it's very simple. Don't attack and injure a paramedic. Now these offences will be heard in court across all 3 courts of the Victorian system, and these changes will be announced in Parliament later this year when Parliament returns in June for the second sitting.
Thanks for that, Ollie.
From July 1, Victorian pet shops will be filled with rescue dogs instead of newborn puppies. Pet shops will act as adoption centres and will only be able to sell dogs over 6 months of age, sourced from registered pounds, animal shelters or enrolled foster carers. Carissa Shale reports on how Victorians are reacting to the changes.
Many are familiar with the cute images of puppies in a pet shop window, but behind closed doors, pet shops have long been outlets for illegal puppy farms and abuse. Changes to the Domestic Animals Amendment Bill have been a long time coming for Deborah Tranter, the founder of Oscar's Law.
We've been fighting for these laws, well, me personally, since 1994. Having pet shops as adoption centres, it's going to showcase rescue pets to the community. Pounds and shelters are usually very hidden in industrial estates. They're not in shopping centres like pet shops are. So having pet shops turn into adoption centres, it's really going to showcase and highlight how awesome rescue dogs are.
These glass windows behind me used to be filled with 8-week-old puppies. Once an outlet for illegal puppy farmers, Passion for Pets is currently preparing for the new laws.
We've just been speaking to a pet shop in there actually that have just demolished all their glass cages in their window, and they're here contacting rescue groups today to work out some arrangements for adoption days. So a lot of pet shops are embracing this, and it's because their customers have been asking for this for a long time too.
We have a rescue dog.
We do, yes.
And she's the best dog in the
lovely.
world.
It's just the best dog we have.
We did buy a rescue dog up in Sydney once. It was a beautiful little Shih Tzu dog, and it was all fluffy, and no, you can save a dog doing it that way, you know what I mean?
Having centres actually bring these dogs to the forefront, it's a really good idea.
Despite the response from most Victorians, many pet shops are still opposed to the laws.
We already had to provide to councils and members of our SPCA where we get all our animals from, so I don't see how this new law is going to actually make any difference.
The Liberals have indicated that if they win government this year, they will overturn those laws. So it's a constant battle for animal welfare.
This is Carissa Shale, reporting for the City Journal.
New data released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics reveals women are dramatically underrepresented in leadership positions despite high levels of education. Christina Carris explores how traditional gender stereotypes are still impacting women who are trying to step up.
Since women first entered the workforce, their role in society has continued to change and grow, but the progress has been gradual.
While today, women make up over 46% of employees across Australia, they are still missing from senior leadership roles and the boardroom.
Statistics reveal that only 16% of our nation's top CEOs are female. While the impact of gender is hard to pin down, women have historically found themselves in the minority and lacking a sense of belonging.
So if I was in the office, say after 5 o'clock, I would get a remark like, "Oh, Fatima, it's 5 o'clock, don't you think you should be going home to your husband, or shouldn't you be going home to cook?"
And they think it's funny, and it's not. It's a stereotype.
Isabel suggests this attitude of gender bias has lingered from years of inequality and is made worse by the negative language used to represent women.
There's this field about how language affects your cognitive processes and vice versa. The more you say those things, the more you're likely to believe in them. And then it just becomes a way of thinking. It's not funny anymore, it's reality for you.
A Forbes article from 2014 found that women were 48% more likely to receive personal negative feedback compared to their male counterparts.
You don't also want to build yourself a reputation where people think you're hard to deal with and assertive and a little bit too, too competitive.
But in the past year, 43% of manager appointments went to women, with representation improving across most industries. If the trend continues, gender equality in management might be well on its way. Christina Carris, City Journal News.
A study from an English university suggests dancers are the athletes most likely to suffer a serious injury. And of those with injuries, young teenage dancers make up the majority. Earlier today, I investigated that these growing dancers often dance through pain in a quest for perfection.
They make it look so easy. But behind the curtain, young dancers are our most injured athletes. Adolescent dancers between the ages of 11 and 15 are most at risk of serious injury, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Chronic inflammation and strains are their most common injuries. But why is it so many young dancers are fighting the injury battle?
I just don't think we get adequate time to rest and go through proper rehabilitation, usually because we're always on such demand for performances and showcases and things like that.
The notion that the show must go on puts particular strain on those dancing full-time, often training until early hours of the morning.
So we had 3 girls in a boot last year within one term. Really severe acute tightness amongst everyone, pulling muscles and things like that.
And some experts suggest young dancers don't know their own physical limitations.
Quite often it's that thing of going 110%, and that's a big thing of pushing beyond their limits, and of course that's where things break. 110% it'll break, 100% you're on the brink. Come back to 90%, 95%. And that age of 11 to 15, they've yet to find that out.
Social media has also seen the rise of the hyperextension, where dancers push their bodies beyond the normal range of movement.
The lines are getting very blurred as to how hard you can push your body, because it does have a limit.
We train like it's a sport, but we perform it like an art.
And while it may look effortless to watch, these dancers and their injuries are proof of the strenuous efforts that go on behind the curtain. Bethany Hayes, City Journal News.
It's a very interesting story, Bethany. Now, I understand you're a dancer. Have you experienced any such injuries?
I am a dancer. I've actually danced for 9 years, and when I was 12, I actually pulled my right hamstring. So that was not a good time in my life.
That's terrible. Do you still feel that that impedes your dancing now?
I think I was lucky in the sense that I was quite young when it happened, so my body was quite malleable, and it's definitely healed since then. There are the odd occasions that I feel it, and it's, you know, just a memory of like how hard, you know, dancers really push themselves, and I pushed myself at that moment.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'd be a little bit better on the dance floor than I am. Well, now we're off to Celine Farrah for the weather. And Celine, how's the outlook for the rest of the day?
Thanks, Chris. For the rest of the day, there will be southwesterly winds at 15 to 25 kilometres an hour, with light showers mostly in the eastern suburbs. Tonight will dip to 12 degrees. Tomorrow we can expect a few showers, but once again mainly in the eastern suburbs with up to 5 millimetres and a top of 16 degrees. We're in for another cool and cloudy day on Thursday, again a top of 16 degrees with light showers. On Friday, we should see some decent sunshine with light winds, along with another top of 16. But the clear skies will mean cooler mornings, down to 6 on Saturday, ahead of a gorgeous sunny top of 17 degrees. And Sunday is looking pretty good, mostly sunny and 18 degrees. That's all for weather. So what are your plans for the weekend, guys?
Sounds like we're going to have to get out and enjoy that sunshine.
I think we might have to, definitely worthwhile.
Thanks, Celine. And now for a recap of today's headlines. A Manus Island refugee has died after jumping from a moving bus.
One Nation leader Pauline Hanson has withdrawn support for the Coalition's company tax cuts.
More than 400 jobs are now at risk after 2 private hospitals in Geelong and Kew announced the institutions are no longer viable.
South Australian Archbishop Philip Wilson has been found guilty of concealing child sexual abuse.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have released 3 official portraits from the royal wedding.
That's all from us at City Journal News. Thanks for your company.
For more news updates, visit us at the RMIT City Journal website or via Facebook and Twitter. From the team at City Journal News, take care and good night.